Okay, today we're going to be looking at fractions again. We will be able to review the parts of a fraction and how to add fractions. We will review mixed fractions and how you can modify them but keep the same value. And we'll be able to determine the lowest common denominator. Once we do all that, the thing that's not written down here is you'll be able to find and order fractions. Okay, as we talked about last day, this is a fraction. It's 2 over 4, which can also be written, if we wanted to, the number 2 divided by 4. If we're going to write this down as a fraction, or a decimal, I should say, we simply have to ask ourselves how many times does 4 go into 2? And 0 times. Now, because we still need to break it down, we can add a 0 to the 20, or to the 2, make it 20. As long as we add a decimal. Now we're going into the parts of a whole. How many times does 4 go into 20? And it goes in there 4 times 5 is 20. And we subtract that out, and we're left with no remainder. So 2 divided by 4 is equal to 0.5. That's a simple concept. You need to be able to do division, and you need to be able to make sure you know where your place values are. Now, if we're looking at an addition equation, we can take 2 over 4 and we can add it to 3 over 4. And we do not add up the denominators, the bottom number. We only add up the numerator, which is the top number. So, yes up here and no down here. So 2 and 3 is 5. 4 and 4, we do not make it 8. We simply leave it as 4. And we're left with 5 over 4. That's how we add up fractions. Okay. Now we know how to add up fractions. 4 plus 5 over 6 is 9 over 6. This number on the top is obviously larger than the number on the bottom. So what do? Well, we see how many times does the bottom go into the top number. So 9 over 6 is equal to 6 over 6 plus 3 over 6. That 6 over 6 is a whole. It's a 1. If you do 6 divided by 6, it's still equal to 1. So what this really does, it gives us a large number 1, and then we're still left with 3 over 6. And we could reduce that farther if we wanted to, but we're not going to get into that right now. Okay. When we have to add up fractions with different denominators, which means the bottom number is not the same, we need to find a way to make that bottom number the same. So we have to go through their multiples. We can do 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, and so forth. Keep on going up, and same with the 2s, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. While this is a simple set of numbers, 3 and 2, we can simply see that these are 6 and 6. You do need to be able to transfer this or use this strategy on harder numbers. Now, that said, the common number is 6. So how do we make that 6 on the bottom of each one? That's the common number. We are saying that 6 will be at the bottom of each one. So we're modifying 3 to become that 6. How do we modify that 3 to become 6? We multiply it by 2. 3 times 2 is 6. Now, if you remember, whatever we do to the bottom, we must do to the top. Now, I multiplied 3 times 2, therefore I must multiply 2 times 2, and that equals 4. Using another color here, I'll do the number 2. To make 2 into 6, I have to multiply that by 3. Whatever I do to the bottom, I must do to the top. 1 times 3 is 3. And now I can add these up nice and easily. The bottom number never changes, but the top numbers I can add up, and that gives me 7 over 6. How many times does 6 go into 7? Well, once, so I get a whole out of that, and I'm left with 1/6 as a fraction left over. So 1 and 1/6. When it is written like this, it is called a mixed fraction. Good. So far, we're doing a lot of review. And looking back on the board after the fact, yes, it does look confusing. But if you go through the steps, of finding out what the multiples are, finding out which one they all have in common, and then modifying both the top and the bottom systematically, it will work. It means you have to go through the steps. Now let's look at this set. We have three different fractions. We have 2 over 3, 1 over 2, and 7 over 4. And what we need to do is we need to order these fractions from least to greatest. If we're going to order them, which means put them in an order, we need to use a number line. Now, a number line, as always, has 10 points across it. We have the 0 point, we got your 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and then there's 10 spaces all along. And we can use that to simply say that this is a whole now. Just like we can use decimals, this could be 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, 0.4, 5, 6, 7, 9, and 0.10 doesn't exist, whereas 1 does. We can use this number line. We know where 1/2 would go, and that's easy. 1/2 would go right about that midpoint, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right here. So we know that this middle point is 1/2. That's easy to order. Now, what do we do if we got that 2/3? How do we make 2/3 fit into this? It'd be easy if we had a common denominator, but right now we don't. Maybe we could. Maybe we can somehow find the commonality here. As we've shown in the past, or just a few slides ago, the common denominator is 6. Whatever I do to the bottom, I must do to the top. To get 3 to turn into 6, I multiply it by 2. Therefore, I must multiply that 2 by 2. That gives me 4/6. Same thing over here with the 2. That 2 became a 6 by multiplying it by 3. 1 times 3 is 3. So 3/6 is also right here, because that's the same thing, right? Well, what if we turn our number line into 6ths now? So what I've done is I've just drawn another number line directly below it. It still has now 6ths inherently in it. So I can say 3/6 is right here, because that's 1, 2, 3, and there's 6 pieces all together, so that's 3/6. Now what if I have 4/6 would go right here, 4/6. I'm ordering them on this number line. Now, of course, we have that good old-fashioned 7 over 4. That's a little bit more difficult. If I want to get that 7 over 4 into this whole ordeal, what I need to do is shrink my number line down. I'm doing that for a simple reason. The simple reason is that 7 over 4 is greater than 1, because really what this equals out to is a whole and 3 over 4. Obviously that's bigger than the 3 over 6 and 4 over 6, but we still need to be able to put this on our number line. Now this is our 1 whole right here. 1 over 1. So how are we going to continue this on? We can continue it on right here, and we can continue it on right here. Our both number lines are going forward. So we have our 1 point lined up. We have our first chart right here, which had our half mark. And now to get onto 1 3/4, well, 3/4, let's play with that one first. Again, I can have another half way through on my new number line, expanding past the 1. Now 3/4 is just over another half, which means I have to basically break something into 4 pieces. 1, 2, that'll be 3/4 over there. So our 1/2 of 1 started right here. We couldn't quite fit in our 2/3, so we broke into another fraction of a number line here, which covered 6ths. We were able to place our 2/3 essentially as 4/6. Now going forward again, we had to go back to using our first number line and expand it to add in our quarters. Who's confused? I'm going to guess that all of you are right now. So we're going to try another example of that, okay? Okay. For this set, what I need to do is, again, I need to order all of these numbers. I have 7 over 8, 9 over 8, 1/4, and 0.75. I need to order these. Now, it's the exact same thing as we were doing before. So let's just take a look-see, shall we? Other than using that number line, the easy thing to do is just to have a common denominator. So let's do that. First one that obviously is not a fraction is the 0.75. But if you remember back into our place values, this would be our tenths, and this would be our hundredths. Easy way to do that is to simply convert this 0.75 into a fraction, which is 75 hundredths. If you go back into this ideology of how can we reduce this number, think of it as a dollar. A dollar is 100 pennies, and if you have 75 cents, you have 3/4, or 3/4 of a dollar, 3/4 of a whole. This 3/4 allows us to have a fraction. Okay, looking ahead, we want to have a common denominator. Oh, we can't do that yet because this one still has that mixed fraction. If we have a mixed fraction, we can turn it into another fraction because that 1 represents 4 over 4. We can add these numbers up, of course. 4 and 4 on the bottom does not change. We leave it as a 4 on the bottom. But we can add the top 4 and the top 1. What's 4 plus 1? It's 5. Now we have another fraction. Let's take these fractions and just write them all out again. We have 7 over 8, we have 9 over 8, we have 5 over 4, and 3 over 4. We need to have a common denominator. If we go through the steps, you could say that 8, 16, 24, 8, 16, 24, 4, 8, 12, 4, 8, 12. Do you see the common denominator? I hope so. The common one that they all have is 8. So all we need to do is change these two 4s into 8s. Let's do that. To change those 4s into 8s, we simply multiply it by 2. So 4 times 2 is 8. 8 on the bottom. 5 times 2 is 10 on the top. The other one, 4 times 2 again is 8. 3 times 2 is 6. Now let's put the other ones now beside it here. Now we have all of our fractions, and we can order them. And this is pretty simple. We have 6 over 8, which you can slide to this end. That 6 over 8 in the beginning was 0.75. The 10 over 8 was the 1 and 1/4. Then we have the 9 over 8 and the 7 over 8. That's pretty cool. So we were just able to order all of those by finding common denominators, making sure they were all fractions, and then just putting them in order. If I was to take this one step farther and say, okay, now you need to find what number goes in between 9/8 and 10/8. This gets a little difficult because, well, you can't say 9.5/8 because that doesn't work. So what we need to do is we need to up it. We need to up our lower denominator on both sides. So if we're going to up it up, the next multiple of 8 is 16. So I want to make that 16, and therefore I need to make the other one 16 as well. How to make 8 and 16? I times it by 2. So 9 times 2 as well is 18. 10 times 2 is 20. And now I have a number gap right here. I have a 19. 19/16 would be the number in between. 19/16 goes in between there. And 19/16 goes between there. Okay, now it's time for your homework. Okay, here is your homework today, page 94, questions 3, 4, 6, and 11. Listen very carefully. For questions 3 and 4, you do not need to use a number line. Question 4 says to use a decimal, so make sure you write number 4 as a decimal. Number 3, it says use number line. I'm saying don't use that. Just order them from least to greatest. Okay, good luck. Let me know if you have any questions.